Washington's headed to Penn State. It's time for some keys to the game.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back in to another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's site editor with Athlon Sports Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Lars got a really fun show coming at all the everydayers today. It is our keys to the game prediction show, our favorite show of the week. I literally just realized that I'm wearing all white in the whiteout spirit. I swear that just hit me in this moment. So, but getting in the spirit, you're going to be there at the game. It's going to be a truly one of a kind environment. That's going to be so much fun. So, as all the everydayers know, we got our bold predictions. We got your always accurate score prediction. We got our defensive keys, but as always, we start on the offensive side of the ball. So, Lars, what is your first offensive key to a Washington victory over Penn State?
So it's a carryover. It's tried and true. And again, as we always say, look, whoever wins this, wins the game. If you get more points than your opponent, you win the game. All this sort of good stuff. But to me, it's establishing the trenches. Everything builds off of that. It's what we talked about on the Thursday show. And it's not just a repeat of that, but that's where this game lives and dies. If Washington can't establish the run or any semblance of a pass game, like if you don't establish the trenches, Will ain't going to survive. Demond, if you throw him in, ain't going to survive. Jonah's going to get, demolished. And so it's like, and I don't say that in terms of like we want that to happen, but I'm just saying, like, if you don't establish the trenches, you're not it take the 13.5 for Penn State, and it might be 21 at that point.
So I'm certainly with you there, where when I look at this, like we said on our Thursday show, that's why we led the Thursday show with, hey, it starts on the offensive line. You got some young guys. Landon Hatchett is going to be making his third career start. Kaylee Tafai is going to be making his second career start. So there are some questions there, but they look solid. I like the building blocks. I think they're heading in the right direction, but this is going to be a much tougher task than they faced last week against USC. But for me, the number one thing, it's not running the ball. It's not Jonah Coleman. It's Will Rogers protecting the football, staying in rhythm, and finding ways to move the chains, where, his average depth of target isn't what Michael Penix's was. It's not going to be, 12 yards downfield like Mike was in 2023. So I look at Will and I say, all right, you need to be in tune with your receivers, whether it be Denzel Boston, Jeremiah Hunter, Giles Jackson, Kaleki Latu, Jonah Coleman, Cam Davis out of the backfield. Whoever it is, whoever you want it to be, you have to make sure that you are in rhythm and protecting the football, because this is a Penn State defense that will take advantage of bad throws. It will take advantage if you're not, perfectly in rhythm and doing exactly what you want to do. And we know this Washington offense can do that. We've seen them do that, but you're going to have to do it early and often, because then if you're able to spread them out a little bit, I think this is a game where, to help the offensive line, it might be a little better to pass to set up the run and see how that goes. That's just kind of my thought process on this.
So I'm with you there. And also the one name that you hit on, I think this is the key here. And I kind of going to, go against my own point that I said on the Thursday show about AJ Harris and Denzel versus Jeremiah, or one of the two. I think Giles is the X factor here. Now, again, we both understand, Kaleki and the tight ends are kind of a different version of the X factor in that regard. Giles, 2 games, didn't play against in 2020 against Michigan, against Penn State. Did play in 2019 at Penn State, didn't record a catch, but was at least active and wasn't a did not play guy. So 28-21 result for Penn State on that night. Giles knows how to play in Beaver Stadium. Giles, when at his best, the Wazoo game, like how many other games, the Michigan game is pretty good as well. Giles needs to find some involvement. It almost seems like when Giles cooks as the X factor, Washington wins. I haven't really thought of a game where Washington lost that Giles is truly cooked. Now, there probably is one or two. Trying to avoid that one, but aside from that,
so like you can't think of one.
Well, because there's one, because that was more on Jedd than it was on Giles. That was where Giles gets that last touchdown target. We're not even
sure, but we don't need to go back down that road. We've gotten so. Oh no, go ahead. Yeah,
but that's what makes it so important to get these results at the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's where the next thing for me that I'm really looking at in this game is I like where you're going with individual X factors, and you have to just go back to the guy that we talked about him a lot yesterday, but rightfully so. It's Jonah Coleman, where I look at this because I talked about it on the Thursday show. I look at what Penn State did in terms of defensively against the run to Ohio State. 40 carries, 176 yards, 4.5 per attempt. They were solid against a really talented duo of running backs. And when I look at this Washington offensive line, I say, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think 200 rushing yards or anything close to that might be in the cards in this game. But can you get in total, like with DeMond, with Cam Davis and Adam Muhammad, 140? Can you get 95 to 100 from Jonah? Because I feel like that's going to be a recipe for success. Where it's I know I said this yesterday as well, but when we talk about the life in the Big Ten and what some of these things look like in terms of just different ways to win and different game style. Right now, one of the things that this team needs to do is find a way to control the clock and just grind it out and grind out drives and have those drives end in touchdowns, because in the whiteout, that's one thing that can take the crowd out of it. If you're on the field for 13, 14, 15 plays, which is something we've seen this offense do, that's going to take the crowd out of it a little bit. And that's something that Jonah is very, very good at doing.
Exactly. And it's also how you make Will survive. Like if you're talking about, hey, Will protect the ball, putting it in his hand 30 plus times. I mean, we know he can do it, but this season and this scheme and this offense with what Jedd wants to do hasn't been a recipe for success. The other side of that equation, as we're talking about, Jonah, because you're absolutely right, Jonah's just as important in this and all that. But the one guy that kind of is almost in his own league in this respect, what's the plan for DeMond this week?
Oh, yeah, I like this.
Where do we go here? Because against Indiana, 8 snaps. Against USC, look better, I think. But, again, still maybe not where we had seen Jonah previously. And it's almost like, okay, this kind of seems like, look, if DeMond's going to be the face of Washington football for the next 3 to 4 years, why not? First year one. I'm not thinking let DeMond start to cook, but like the involvement that DeMond has in this game, I think could give you an extra possession or touchdown that you might not have otherwise with the regular offense.
I agree. So as you were saying all that, I was kind of brainstorming, because the first thing I thought of is what our good buddy Jake Butt told us on Monday, and that was you don't want to have him do too much because of the environment, because of where it is. Remember, he was just like, no. Not like that's not what you want, but you still want to use him. You're right. I agree. I think that this is one of those games where it's going to be very similar to what we've seen. If I were to make a bold prediction on the DeMond usage, I'm going to put it, okay, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to say he gets 11 snaps, and I'm going to say all but one of those plays are a zone read, because that's what we've seen so much from him. And that's not a bad thing. That's just where he is. That's what his skill set is, and that's what they need from him right now. And I think that's perfect to, throw off the Penn State defense, whatever it is you might want to be. And it's one of those things where if it's running effectively and you're able to move the ball with it, you can keep him on the field for it. And some of those things where you don't have to, because Jedd has a tendency to, a couple of plays go the wrong way with him, and he's going to pull them out. Yeah, I get it. Like, that's just kind of where it is at this point in time. But if you're able to keep Penn State off balance and you're able to continually move the ball downfield with that play and with different variations of it, that's something that could be really effective in this game and go exactly towards the game plan, which is find ways to control the clock and take the crowd out of it. So I think that's something we're going to end up seeing. And give me, of those 11 snaps, I think he's going to keep it 4 times.
I like that, but again, the other side of the equation, you want to have at least 1 or 2 passes, because again, Jedd's going to die on that vine, which I'm okay with, because it's, you do need, if you're going to bring DeMond in at any point this season, he has to have a semblance of a pass game. He has to, because otherwise, if we're doing a DJ Lago way where it's like, hey, you're really more the athlete, not really the passer, teams are going to key in on that wage, whether it is a zone read hand up to Jonah or Adam or whoever. DeMond, those one little 2 or 3 throws usually tend to kind of sway things one or the apple cup negative.
Sure.
Couple others positive. Gets his first rushing touchdown. I think that's the other side of the question. Maybe you get a rushing touchdown. You get an extra bonus touchdown there. I think that's going to be one of the keys to separate this game.
So, Lars, let's move on to the defensive side then. Right after messages from our friends over at LinkedIn, because when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free, because LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. You can hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. And that's why LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockdowncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockdowncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So, Lars, when we jump over to the defensive side here, what's the number one thing that Washington needs to do to stop this Penn State offense?
Contain and force Drew Allar to be a pocket quarterback, because I swear to God, that has got to be the only way this team wins on defense. Like, Now, not the only way, not to be clear, but that's the top of the list. Like, if Drew Allar's got to be, Will Howard, the pocket guy, and actually think and manage, I don't have as much success. I don't have as much faith in Drew Allar as I do, a few other quarterbacks. But that's where it all starts. If he can stay in the pocket, you can force him to stay in the pocket, keep the run game respectable, but it really more so force the pocket. That's not just force the pass, force the pocket. Because as we talked about, Drew Allar can run. He's no, Damon Williams, but he can run.
Yeah.
And so, keeping a guy like that, because those are the plays where we've seen not just the John Mateer 3rd and 20 against Wazoo, but, those 3rd and 8s that scramble for a first. Now your defense, now you got a whole fresh set of downs. Now your defense, instead of getting off the field, back, we're still on. And that's how those long bleeding drives take place, and how your defense eventually wears over time.
So I really like where you're going with that. And one thing I have to say about this Washington defense is I'm really confident that the linebacker unit can do that. Where after the USC game on Saturday, Jedd Fisch said that was the best game his linebacker unit has played all season. And I agree with him there. Obviously, Carson won Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week. Steve Belichick, as he was walking out of his press conference on Tuesday, saw Carson and said, "That doesn't mean anything." So that was just a fun little note that needed to be thrown in there, because that was pretty funny. But it's one of those things where you got Carson, you got Alfonso Tuputala, you got Kamori House. That's a really good trio of linebackers, especially with the way that Kamori has just evolved and grown over the course of 9-10 games as a true freshman. So the more I look at this linebacker core, I say I have faith in them to be able to do that. What I want to see is with Nicholas Singleton, who's not 100%, according to our guy Zach Seiko of Locked On Nittany Lions, what are you going to be able to do to contain this run game? That's where it starts for me, because in order to be able to even be in a situation where you can do what you want, Lars, you have to be able to stop the run. And this is a team that can do that really well, where Penn State's offensive line, it wasn't necessarily great in a run blocking sense against Ohio State, but it was really good when it was pass blocking. So you have to find a way to take advantage of this offensive line when they are trying to run the football. And I want to see what these defensive tackles can do and this defensive line. And, part of that is going to be whether Zach Durfee plays or not. We'll see. And yeah, that's something I'm going to be watching really closely.
So I find it, I'm glad you mentioned the run game and all that, because there's two things I want to take off of that, because it's a great point. The first 3 teams in the Big Ten rushing yards per game, Iowa, Indiana, Penn State.
Yep.
First 2, we already know what happened. But the difference, and why I bring this up, first 2 have 25 touchdowns and 32 touchdowns respectively, Iowa, Indiana. Penn State only has 13. So for me, that is a significant, okay, you can let them get the yards. You can do whatever, you might get gassed every now and then, but where does this Washington defense rise to the occasion? Almost every single time. In the red zone when it matters. And especially at the goal line, exactly. And so for me, look, if they get 120, 130, whatever it is, I think their season average is 187. So let's say they get 150 on the ground, which is conservative estimate, 180, 150. But you only give up 1 touchdown, similar to USC. That's all that matters. Yep. You can give up 250 yards on the ground. Do not care, as long as there's only 1 touchdown. Yep. That to me, because then if you get Drew Allar 1 or 2, force Drew into pick or two, you're talking about 21-20 a game,
Right.
which is exactly what this feels like.
And that's the whole thing. It's finding ways for this offense to play into your strengths defensively. And that's something that Steve Belichick is really good at. And it's something I've harped on all week is I don't think this Penn State receiver core is what we saw last week from USC. I don't think it's what we'll see in a couple weeks with Oregon, where, without Tez Johnson, I'm not overly impressed with them. We'll see how that works. But I think that Washington secondary, if everything breaks right, could have a major impact and a major advantage in this game. And the whole question is, are you going to be able to make the plays so that they can have that impact? Because if it's 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, or, like in the USC game where it's 3rd and 4 on 3 straight runs and they still were able to pick up first downs on the ground, that's not going to do it. That's not going to work the way you want it to. But if you can find ways to stop the run and, force them into 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, all of a sudden your secondary can have a massive impact on this game, as they have all season, after 3 turnovers, 3 picks, especially 2 of them come from linebackers. Yeah. But it's because Steve Belichick knows how to put these guys in position to make plays.
And that kind of ties in perfectly to one of the guys we need to mention. I know you mentioned him earlier in the week, Tyler Warren. Like, Penn State's leading receiver is a tight end.
Yeah.
So most common matchup on a tight end is going to be a linebacker, potentially a safety, Cameron Star, whatever you want to call it, Kamori, potentially, again, whichever guy you want to put on him at that point, which makes the linebacker play even more important because, let's say you're designing something for Ty Warren to take a linebacker out of the equation and Drew then scrambles and runs up the middle. Steve needs to be able to be caught, which, I have no doubt he is, but be cognizant of, okay, well, how are they going to use the tight end in every scheme potential? Because they're not just going to use them for targets or blocking, which is the traditional top 2 ways you use the tight end. It can also be a decoy. Because again, to your point, they don't necessarily have a ton, but if, let's say, you only need 5 yards on, let's say, 2nd and 5 or 3rd and 5, Ty Warren goes out, there's no linebacker up the middle, Drew Allar is going to waltz right up the middle for 6 yards, and now you have a fresh set of downs. Those are the small little details where I know it's like, well, I don't think that's going to matter that much. And it's like those little details seem to be adding up a lot more than we think.
So I like where you're going with this because I agree with you there. And one thing that I feel we've seen a lot more of in recent weeks as, Kamori has continued to emerge is we're seeing more of a 3-3-5 personnel from this Washington defense, where instead of having 2 edge rushers on the field, and I feel like part of this might be due to the Zach Durfee injury, but the more I look at what this Washington defense is doing, the more, I see this 3-3-5 and I say, all right, that could be really effective in containing Drew Allar, because we saw it for the majority of the game against John Mateer. They did really well with that outside of, the 2 long runs. So I look at this personnel grouping and I say, all right, are you going to be able to be in position to make plays? Because I think, and we've seen it before. So when I look at this Husky secondary, we know Steve wants to play man coverage. And I don't think it's going to be any different against Tyler Warren, because I think if you look at Carson Bruener, you say that's a guy who I know is experienced enough and smart enough to know exactly how to play that. And I think if you look at Kamori House, you say that's a guy who is athletic enough and talented enough to find a way to run with him. Like if that's all you need sometimes. It's just somebody who's going to be able to run with him. And that's what Kamori can do. So I don't know which one might end up being a better answer. But whatever it is, I feel that Steve Belichick is going to trust some of his guys in that one-on-one coverage. And then whichever one isn't doing that is going to end up being the one who is just going to stay close to the line of scrimmage, because we know Alfonso Tuputala can do that as well. We know that he can be in that position where, if he's lined up as an edge rusher, sure, maybe he's still going to drop into the middle and find a way to be that spy. There are a lot of different ways that Steve has shown he's going to formulate the front 7 of his defense to combat something like that.
Exactly. And that's why the way the defense has been set up this season is so important, because it can kind of go against any offense. It can go against any scheme, and it can be tailored towards one or another. And I think that's what kind of makes the Steve Belichick defense go, is you don't have to necessarily say, Kamori, you're just this. Alfonso, you're just that. Carson, you're just this. Now, I absolutely agree. I think, the Zach Durfee, whether he plays or not could be important, because, again, when we haven't necessarily seen a ton of consistency without him in terms of, Ward's look good at times. He flashed against USC. Voight Sneaper's been great. But in terms of, it's that always been, who's that second rusher? And it usually was Durfee, and Durfee hasn't been able to stay healthy this season, which is unfortunate because, again, I think his injuries are kind of just they're kind of freak injuries where it's like you talk about
They are,
dual turf toe. Like I haven't heard of that one. So it's like, I think it's more for a lack of, okay, well, the scheme still got to work. We still got to get wins this season, whether with or without Durfee. And so I'm glad that Steve's kind of found ways to maximize guys' potential, and we'll get to see it again this Saturday.
Lars, are you ready?
Always.
It's time for some bold predictions. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. We've also got a message from our good friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And one of the best bets I think this season is the Lions just to outright win the NFC. Feels like they're well on track to do that. I love the way this team is playing. They just got Zadarius Smith at the deadline. And just the way this team is playing, offense, defense, they're clicking in all three phases of the game. I love what Dan Campbell's doing. I like him for Coach of the Year also. You can go check out all those odds and so many more over on FanDuel. Lars, I'm pretty sure it's your week to go first. I'm stunned that I remember this at this point, but I'm 95% sure, even though it's a Locked On Huskies tradition, that I forget these things. So I'm just going to hand the floor over to you.
No, I think it actually is mine. So again, by the way, shout out to our friends at FanDuel for putting on some same game parlays with players this week. Gotta love that. So for me, I'll start with let's start with the easy one. Will Rogers gets back on track. 21 of 26 for 255 and 2 touchdowns. No picks.
Okay. All right. So I already talked about my Denzel Boston one that I had on our crossover with Zach Sako of Locked On Nittany Lions earlier this week. So I'm going to stay away from that one this week. I'm going to do another Locked On Huskies tradition here, and I'm just going to go with the Jonah Coleman stat line. I don't think he's going to break his career high in carries this week, but I do think he hits 20. So give me 21 carries. I'm going to say 104 yards. He's going to have the same total as last week, but he's only going to have 1 touchdown this week.
I like that. I think that's kind of what we've seen from Jonah, where it's like he'll either get one or the other. He doesn't get both. He either gets the yards or the touchdowns. It's never really been, except for last week, which was kind of the ironic part about that, but it's USC. So with that being said, I'll take the receiving one. So because it's interesting on FanDuel where anytime touchdown, Denzel and Giles are both plus money to get a touchdown. Straight up. Anytime.
I like that.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So we'll do Denzel and Giles, and then there's going to be one more. I'm trying to decide. The money gets even better and better. You know what? We're going to do this. We're doing this. We're doing this. Adam Muhammad gets his first rushing touchdown. So UW does get 2 rushing touchdowns on the day. Jonah gets 1, as you said. Adam gets the other.
I like that. So I'm going to change one of mine with you going that way. I had to go and take some. Just take a look at this here, where I want to do something with Kaleki Latu. I've done the anytime touchdown with him, so I'm going to add that into this. But I wanted to check and see what his career high, or excuse me, not his career, his season high in receiving was with Washington, and it was 7 catches for 65 yards against Michigan. I don't think he gets to 7 catches, but I think he breaks 65 yards. And a big reason for that is I've been so impressed with his run after the catch ability over the last couple of weeks. And I think he's just getting better and better and better at that. And I feel like he's somebody with his big frame that Will Rogers is going to look to him downfield a little bit more this week because he just knows he can just trust him to put it in his general area. And with his frame, he's going to catch it. So give me 5 catches for Kaleki Latu. I'm going to go 67 yards. So I'm just going to barely get the over there on that season high for him. But I think he's also going to score a touchdown this week. I know I had that last week. I'm going back to that well this week. Give me Kaleki Latu's first touchdown as a Washington Husky in this game.
I like that. I mean, it's a crime and it's going to take this long to get him to that point. But yeah, it's because it's what we saw in fall camp. It's like, how does he not have 5 touchdowns right now? Like how?
Yeah.
For what we saw in camp, it was like, okay, like it's all there. But anyways, so for me, let's go on the defensive side. We've got plenty of offense. There's not going to be a ton of offense in this game. Over-under is 44.5. I'm going to probably – my math isn't good. I might take the over slightly on that one, but we'll see. For me, I'm going to go to sacks and tackles for loss. I'm going to say the tackle for loss sack combo, 5.5.
All right.
And I'll take the slight under it. I'll take the slight under at 5 combined tackles. So give me 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss.
Okay.
And I don't have it. I'll give you. I'll make it even better. Voy gets 1.
Here we go.
And you know what? Russell Davis gets 1. Watch that.
Oh, I like this. Okay. Yeah. So I'm really intrigued to see how Russell Davis is going to get used in this game, where Jedd talked about him a little bit on Monday, and it feels like they're just trying to ramp him up more and more. They really like where he's at. And Jedd said, he wasn't healthy for the first couple months of the year, so they ended up using a red shirt with him. And I like that decision because he's just another building block for 2025, and you can see how it all looks, once you get into spring ball and everything like that. But he's somebody who I think can add a lot to this defensive line, where he's got to be healthy. And I want to see if he's one of these guys who in this game is going to be able to set the edge. And I say all this to say, I'm going with the tackles as I always do. I know we did Alfonso Tuputala last week and Carson Bruener, shout out to him. I think Carson leads the way again in this game. And I'm going to go 10 plus. I'm going to set it a little higher because I think Penn State's going to want to run the ball a lot. I think they're going to find ways to try to take advantage of this Washington defensive line, which has been susceptible to the run over the last couple of weeks, as you talked about a little bit earlier, Lars. So I think Carson is going to do a really good job close to the line of scrimmage, clean a lot of things up. So give me 10 plus tackles in this game for Carson Bruener, and he'll lead the Huskies.
I like that. I mean, again, it's one of the, I think we both actually said that on the show. It's like, hey, no offense to Carson, but give us Alfonso. And Carson's like, I take offense to that. But for me, so on that same kind of note, because I think, again, the run game is going to have to come into play. But when Drew Allar drops back to pass, he will have 2 interceptions on the day. 2 sacks, 2 interceptions. See where we're going with this? Maybe 2 losses right at the end of the game. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know how I'm feeling yet. But with that being said, give me 1, 2 Thaddeus Dixon.
Okay. And
give me 1, 2. You know what? Only because it's going to be random, Mikkel.
Oh, okay. I'm Mikkel's team pick. I like that. So you've taken up a lot of the normal categories that we go to, and I had some stuff prepared.
We can double down.
So I'm thinking about it. I just don't know which route I want to go here is the thing. I think I'm going to go with the sacks route. I'm going to say 2 sacks like you did. And so I think Voy gets 1. I agree with you there. This is where I ran into problems. I think the other one this week is going to go to Isaiah Ward. I've been so impressed with him, man. I kind of wanted to find a way to sneak in some Isaiah Ward talk because he was so good against USC last week. He was somebody I was really impressed by. And, one of as we talked about all week long, one of Jedd's themes has been building for 2025, building for the future. Isaiah Ward is one of those guys. And in this game, in this environment, in the whiteout, he's somebody who I can, I feel like I can see coming out of this game with a more national audience, even though the game's on Peacock, being impressed and saying, oh, Isaiah Ward, that's a really fun pass rusher. I like this guy. I want to see what he's able to do next season. So give me Isaiah Ward here for one of those sacks.
You know, we're in the black jerseys this weekend.
I feel like we would have known that already. I will say this is something that I've had some theories on. It feels like the most Jedd Fisch thing you could possibly do for him to say, hey, we're going into the whiteout. Let's wear the all black jerseys. I feel like that announcement would have been made on Monday or Tuesday, though, if that was what they were going to do.
I could also see Jedd not telling anybody, though. Like,
that's fair.
I think there's the Sark side of Jedd, and then there's the other side of Jedd, which is, I think, maybe sneak surprise, blackout.
That'd be fun.
Give him a black eye, that sort of thing. I think it's a black eye on Penn State schedule because then they have 2 losses, which gets us right into. Do you want me to go right into it, or do you want to?
Let's do it.
Trying to. Well, you know what? Let me throw one more. Grady gets 1 field goal. Which being said, kind of leads me into my pick here. So again, I think no doubt Washington covers the 13.5. I don't think I would be very surprised if this game truly gets sideways. To coin a phrase that I said a couple of times on the sideline against USC. Now again, I absolutely can see it going sideways. Like there's plenty of paths to it going sideways, but sure. I just have a hard time seeing this after Iowa and after Indiana. Like you've had enough time from those games to at least get right and not get blown out. I'm gonna try and do the Michigan trick here again. Give me Penn State 30, Washington 24.
All right, so they cover. I like so they at least cover there. Okay, so I like where you're going with this. And yes, to be clear for all the everydayers out there, this is the Lars reverse jinx signature special. Love that. Lars, as always, thank you so much being here. Thank you all everydayers for tuning in. Lars, also have fun on your trip to Penn State. That's going to be an amazing environment to be part of. We can't wait. We're going to have so much fun stuff to talk about from that game, and we're going to be doing it all right here on Locked On Huskies. So to all the everydayers out there, make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click the little bell, so that as we post a new video, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us 5-star reviews. It does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you after the game.